The final paperwork. I would appreciate your support for photo contests so that we
in the
can make Albany
past, so
Christmas cards
that may
next
be
year.
how we've been doing it recently.
We've done it in a lot of other cities.
Yes.
That's a good
Really
idea.
popular.
It is.
Rather than store-bought
On air.
cards that are just good cards.
Mayor,
Nice Albany
on air.
receipt.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
I'll pass that
Great.
along.
Hello, everyone, and good evening, and thank you for attending our City Council meeting this evening. Would you like to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Okay, Mary, roll call.
Olson.
Here.
Collins. Johnson.
Here.
Kellum.
Here.
Hobsinski.
Here.
Coburn.
Here.
Okay, all right. First on our agenda this evening is a proclamation, and this is for World AIDS Awareness Month for December 2014. Whereas World AIDS Day began on December 1st, 1988, with the goal of raising money, increasing awareness, fighting prejudice, and improving education about HIV/AIDS. And whereas World AIDS Day continues to be an important way to celebrate the extraordinary advances we have made in the battle against HIV and AIDS, and to remind Albany residents and people everywhere that HIV has not gone away and that much more has yet to be done. And whereas globally, more than 36 million people have died from AIDS, and more than 33 million people are living with HIV. Though the death rate from this disease is slowly declining, millions have died from this disease and millions more are still at risk. And every 9.5 minutes, someone in the U.S. is infected with HIV. Yet HIV is 100% preventable. And whereas Oregon has over 9,300 people infected with HIV and an estimated 3,700 Oregonians have died. Approximately 274 Oregonians are diagnosed each year for the last 15 years. And whereas HIV/AIDS disproportionately affects our most at-risk, vulnerable communities, and whereas expanded access to HIV testing, diagnosis, and treatment can help reduce the suffering from this entirely preventable disease. And whereas the theme for World AIDS Day 2014 is Focus, Partner, Achieve, an AIDS-free generation. Therefore, I, Sharon Canopa, Mayor of the City of Albany, do hereby proclaim the month of December as World AIDS Awareness Month in the City of Albany, and I urge all citizens to take part in activities and observances designed to increase awareness and understanding of HIV/AIDS as a global challenge, to take part in HIV/AIDS prevention activities and programs, and to join the global effort to prevent the further spread of HIV/AIDS. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Albany to be affixed this third day of December 2014. This proclamation was brought to us, asked from Chance, a local organization here in Albany, and we want to thank them for bringing us this awareness. So, thank you. Thank you for listening. Okay, scheduled business this evening is communications, and this is a recommendation from the Human Relations Commission for a council resolution regarding the rights of all Albany residents. And Javier, Sprint, would you like to come forward? Javier is from our Human Relations Commission. He's a member.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. I have some prepared statements, I guess, in terms of why we're here or why I was asked to speak in front of you today. Thank you very much for having me, and good evening to all of you. As you said, my name is Javier Cervantes. I represent the Human Relations Commission that works with, in conjunction with the City Council. For members of our community to be subjected to the message of hate and distributed in a flyer by anonymous people or persons or gangs of people around the Veterans Day Parade route November 11th is deeply troubling. I oppose this bigoted speech that you found in the flyer in front of you. For many of our veterans to be subjected to this type of language, and people who have stood in harm's way for freedom of speech is understandable. It's very important that we realize that we keep that in mind, but the fact that we have people in our community that would use that as a weapon, in my estimation, as I said, is deeply troubling. Just because a person has the right to espouse such vitriol does not mean we as a community or a municipality have to condone it. No one should have to feel targeted by such vile rhetoric. No one. Not any one of you or me or anybody sitting here. Yet as a person of color living in Albany, I feel targeted by this ugliness, as do other people. I ask myself, how is it possible that people believe they can attack a person's identity, and our country's identity for that matter, knowing full well that it is that great diversity that comprises the tapestry of our great nation is due to the very diversity this fringe group professes to oppose. Many are adamant that racism is a thing of the past, and that people that raise this particular issue are the ones with the problem. Just by merely speaking it, we've become targeted. This flyer, the flyer that you have in front of you, that was passed out during the parade, is evidence that sadly, racism still exists and is alive and well. We've seen it in all over the country recently, even today. If you've been watching the news, calling out racism is not my problem per se. It becomes our collective problem if we don't. Passing the resolution before you is a step in the right direction and sends a message that Albany, Oregon, is a city for everyone and not just for a certain few, as that flyer suggests. As a representative of the community that asked the HRC, the Human Relations Commission, to support the resolution before you, I urge that you pass it or support it yourself publicly. Thank you.
Okay, any questions of Javier? Okay, all right, thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this that, Javier hasn't, any points that Javier hasn't mentioned on this item? Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Oh, and then Susan, I'll get you, yeah.
It's getting slower and slower.
Oh, you're doing great.
And it's getting lower and lower. Slower, lower.
The microphone will pick you up fine, you won't need to adjust.
Pretty good beginning for a rock song.
Yeah, yeah. Could you also state your name and furnish your address too, for the record? Thank you. Could you state your name and furnish your address for the record?
I will.
Thank you.
My name is Franz Schneider, Schneider, obviously a good Italian name. That was supposed to be a joke. I live at 4780 Becker Circle, southeast in Albany, the Mennonite village. And I even had the pleasure to have breakfast with your mayor, our mayor. But she doesn't remember that because it was a men's breakfast.
It was. Very nice group.
I supported CARE's request to have the Human Rights Commission submit a proposal to the city council to condemn the actions of the racists. And in the process of talking to people, beginning with the receptionist at City Hall, I kept running into an idea, a notion, mistaken though it be. Oh, this is just a little thing, we better ignore it. Of course, history began to kick in. And when you live long enough, there's quite a bit of history you can draw on. And you know that Lincoln is right. If you ignore it, you have to repeat it. So here is what I said to the Human Rights Commission, and which I would like to say to you. When I was 10 years old, there were sometimes low but agitated murmurs from the kitchen after we kids had gone to bed. It always happened when my mother's Jewish best friend, Paula Solomon, had come to see her. It did not happen very often because Paula did not want to endanger us. I went to the Solomons' house only once with my mother on some business with Paula's father, Mr. Hessel. This was considered dangerous too, as was buying our meat in their butcher shop once a week. It's the only time we got meat in those days, Sundays. My 3-year older brother tried to explain what was going on, but we weren't supposed to listen to our parents' private conversations, especially these, which were about the Solomons getting ready to leave for America. They had already dropped off some of the furniture, a beautiful chaise lounge, a dining room table, and 6 chairs we ourselves could not have afforded. My idealistic, sweet mother had difficulty accepting the reasons for her friends leaving. They were a prominent and admired family. Their business, which also included trucking and a farm, was an integral part of the economy of our suburb. Classmates, neighbors, and fellow citizens were decent people, and our town, Wiesbaden, had one of the largest synagogues in Germany, where Jews from all over Europe came to worship when taking the waters in the thermal spas. Furthermore, many Jews no longer identified with their religion at all and were completely assimilated. Surely, most thinking people didn't take the anti-Semitic propaganda of the Nazis seriously. Their threats were as little more than verbal violence. My realistic father, who had been politically active in the Center Party during the Weimar Republic as a passionate defender of democracy, saw matters in a different light. He knew that Jews were fast becoming an endangered species, and that the official hatred of Jews by the regime was shared by many, perhaps even the majority. There were daily incidents now of attacks on Jews and their stores all over the Reich, which the authorities actually blamed on the Jews themselves. The latent hatred would soon break out into the open. Jews would not only become non-citizens. The Nuremberg laws passed in 1935 already provided a legal basis for their elimination in the future. Their killing, in other words. Pure German Aryan blood would be purged of Jewish contamination. The German fatherland would be cleansed of the Jewish parasites. It happened sooner than he thought. The process, starting with the Kristallnacht, the night of glass, when Jewish businesses, especially jewelry stores, were trashed or set afire. The synagogue burned for 3 days, the fire department protecting only the houses next door. The store windows were smashed, and the crystal and glass littered the streets for days and weeks, especially in areas where Jewish merchants were concentrated. Fortunately, the Solomons had their tickets and passports already and left by boat to New York in December, actually aided by the regime that wanted as many Jews out of the country as soon as possible. In my suburb, 44 stayed behind. Most of them simply could not afford to pay for the passage to America. None of them survived. In 48, I was in the first group of exchange students to come to the United States. I had been designated Democracy Scholar by what was then Washington State College to study the American educational system. So when on my stopover in Manhattan, the Solomons invited me to Sunday dinner, I gladly accepted. Arthur Sr. fetched me in a brand new Buick, and after a tour of Manhattan, took me to dinner. The Solomons obviously had already prospered. The dinner itself was a joyous occasion, except for the weather, both temperature and humidity being in the 90s. No air conditioning in those days. But I did not let it bother me. Suffering still from the results of the starvation years during 45, 46, and 47, I gladly accepted the rich blessings of their Sunday dinner table. When the two sons, Alfred and Arthur Jr., began talking of revenge, their father hushed them and asked their mother to open the door to a hallway in what I thought was an attempt to get us some fresh air. But obviously, it had been an agreed-upon signal, for her practically blind 90-year-old father, Mr. Hessel, hesitantly stepped forward, just wearing his trousers hanging by suspenders from a thin, almost emaciated body. The only other thing he wore were slippers. He looked like someone recently liberated from Dachau. As I met him to shake hands, he started to sob, embraced me, and wept. Holding on to me, he kept repeating between sobs, "A piece of the fatherland, a piece of the fatherland." Only a child of these times could have comprehended the searing irony and profound tragedy of that moment. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members, for lending me an ear. I appreciate it.
Thanks goes to you, friends, so thank you. Any questions, friends? Okay, thank you for your story. Sort of feedback off the microphone.
I live at 2660 Northwest 18th Avenue in Albany. Thank you for having us. We realize that it is uncomfortable to think about race relations and that no one wants to venture far from their comfort zone. People in the Mid-Willamette Valley are comfortable with the way things have always been, and change can be challenging for everyone. The world itself is becoming more polarized, but I know we're all looking for the same thing in Albany: peace, compassion, opportunity, and the ability to have a purposeful life within our chosen community. CARE wants to take this a step further and create a community that understands the value of opening the doors to more inclusivity, in which people of color are actively welcomed for the contributions they bring. This group here tonight is not asking for anything outside the realm of possibility. We're asking for the City of Albany to endorse, as the Human Relations Commission has already done, a resolution in which the City of Albany will pledge to be vigilant in the defense of the rights of all our citizens, residents, to be proactive as we move forward in our attempts to be a welcoming community for all people looking for a better life, and steadfast and vigorous in condemning all forms of hate and bigotry. By addressing Oregon's history on race relations, we open ourselves up to the very real potential for truly being welcoming and inclusive communities, ones which honor the contributions that everyone, regardless of their racial identity, can bring. Thank you.
All right, any questions of Susan? Okay, thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak on this? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Denise Hughes Taffen, and I live at 2922 Northwest Squire Street here in Albany. And I'm here tonight as a member of CARE, as a community member of Albany, and also as a mother, particularly as a mother of 2 boys of African descent. We moved here to Albany 4 years ago, and we chose to move here. We moved here because we felt that Albany could be a place that we could call home. After hearing the news about the circulation that was passed around on Veterans Day, it scared me. While I realized that this is the process of free speech and that people are free to say whatever is on their mind, for me, it really took me back, because it wasn't that long ago in this country that such words also was connected to racial violence. And that is not something that is in the past either. So I was scared for my family because I know the product of such hate, but more so I was terrified, and I am terrified for my 2 boys. My sons are only 3 and 7. And especially my 7-year-old, he was so excited, and since we have lived in Albany, this is a parade that we have gone to. And on this particular day, we were actually at the coast, and he insisted that we come back to Albany so that he can attend this parade. I can't imagine, how he would have felt or how we would have felt if we had actually found that flyer on our car. I believe that our hopes, my husband and my hopes for our young children, is the same as any other parent. And that is, we want our children to live in our community where they feel safe, where they feel welcome, and where they feel embraced. And such words, hate creates division, it creates exclusion. And I appeal to you that while, as I said before, that people are free to say whatever they want to, I consider you as a type of voice for Albany, and I think that silence gives consent. And I think that when we allow these things to happen because, well, these things, happen or whatever, that we create room for more things to happen. And that now is the time to stamp this out and to stamp it out at its root instead of allowing it to propagate. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Denise, thank you. Okay, anyone else on this matter, this item? Okay, oh, yes, hi, Ron.
My name is Ron Green. I live at 955 Fifth Avenue Southwest in Albany. Madam Mayor and members of the council, thank you for allowing me to speak to you briefly. As a person who grew up in the South quite a few years ago, my experience doesn't go back as far as Mr. Schneider, but about 20 years after that, I found myself kind of coming of age and of consciousness in a small town that was 40% African American, and yet completely separated from me as a white boy. We had two separate sets of water fountains. We had two separate sets of restrooms, and the usual kind of Jim Crow South that some of you may have experienced, but those of us who, or those of you who grew up in the Northwest probably never saw. I'll relate one small incident that happened probably in about 1957. I was walking on the street in downtown, small town in East Texas. I won't name the town, but I can tell you privately if you'd like to talk to me about it later. An old elderly black gentleman stepped off the sidewalk, off the curb into the street, into the gutter to let me pass. And that particular incident kind of struck me at the time and stuck with me, and it's something I had to process and figure out as I grew older and came out of that particular environment and out into the larger world. And what I experienced at the time was really an example of white privilege. It's something that all of us as white people have experienced, whether or not we've processed it or understood it. It's something that has existed and still does exist. And I suggest to the council that to act on this resolution, this before you, in the strongest possible language, in the strongest possible terms, is to commit our city to going through what each person, each one of us as a white person ought to do in his or her own life to process what it really means to experience membership in a ruling class. We can't possibly know, each of us, what a member of a minority, a person of color, experiences in his or her life. And nor should we. There's no way that we can do that or approximate that experience. But we can develop ourselves and examine ourselves, I think, and do the work. And it's hard work to try to overcome our own sense of prejudice or bias and understand our own white privilege. It's not easy. Most of us would rather be comfortable and be post-racial and say, well, we've got all this behind us and I will accept anybody and I will try to agree to be friendly with anybody and so forth. And that's all fine and good and it's comfortable, but the work I think that we have to do as individuals and perhaps even as a municipality is not comfortable or easy work. Thank you very much for listening to this message.
Questions of Ron? Okay, thank you, Ron.
Thanks.
All right, anyone else? Okay, all right, thank you, folks. Council, you have a resolution that's on page 4, and do you have any questions of staff? Or I'll entertain a motion, or questions over the resolution? Or a motion?
Madam Mayor,
Uh-huh.
not having any better sense. Evelyn Beatrice Hall wrote under the pen name S.G. Talentair. She said, I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Supposedly, at that point quoting something Voltaire had said, but that seems to be the only place where it came from. Are those just words? Or do we mean them? Our society is replete with examples of people doing bad things to each other. I mean, if you look in the last 2 months, guy walks down the middle of the road and is shot. You hear one story from one side and another story from another side. And to begin with, neither one of them were true. Eventually, the truth comes out, and then people on the opposite side don't believe. It's understandable. I mean, there have been times when, and it's not just people of color, I guess I'd point out white is a color as well. And I don't know, when I ran for office, I was called, I'm nothing but a damn teabagger. Now, to those of you who know what that means, you know that's reprehensible. I understood it, and the guy that said it, to his credit, when he found out what it meant, he came and apologized to me. But this is not a unidimensional problem. It is a problem that we all face. I would ask that we make something larger than this. That includes whatever side of this story. Because while hate is something we don't want, I mean, when you have someone step up and say, gee, we have this racist background, well, there is a racist background, and we should give ourselves credit for the distance that we have come, even though it is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But it is not always one side. It is not always one color. I mean, if you ask Korean folks in New York City, they will tell you blacks are racist toward them, or have been at least. I mean, there are places that if you have the wrong color skin in various cities, you better not go because you will be attacked. And that's not one color. That's numbers. I guess I would ask that this body, I don't know whether it's staff that needs to do it or exactly how it needs to happen, but include the entire problem. I mean, this is to me, it's kind of like a stamp on a mirror. We look at it and we say, you know, this, yeah, great, this sounds wonderful. And then we notice it's this one thing over on the side when the problem is a lot bigger problem. That's what I have to say.
Now, Ray?
I'll take a little bit of a different tack than Rich does. I think Franz absolutely nailed it, dead solid center. If we don't do something, I think we're bound to repeat it, and it's been going over and over and over again. Several people have mentioned that folks have the right for free speech. It's not absolute. There's all sorts of ways and reasons that has been denied folks validly. And in this particular case, if one group, the perpetrators of this writing that was put on many cars in the area while I was in the parade, Rich is a veteran, I'm a veteran, other folks here in the room are veterans. I think that was unconscionable. And just as those folks may have the right to spew that kind of vitriol, I have just as much right to say that there are some folks in the world that would do it a great favor by taking themselves out of its gene pool. I'm done. I think we ought to pass this.
I'll make I'll make a motion for adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye, and only because I don't think it goes far enough.
Okay, all right. Motion carried. And so with that, the resolution has been adopted by the council. So I want to thank all of you for attending. And I do want to also mention something that, you know, I had a couple phone messages, and one was making it, stating that they didn't think Albany was a welcoming community. And I just want to kind of, mention out there that we are a very welcoming and a very caring community. So if you can really get that message out to folks. And I've lived here my whole life, and I have never seen where, Albany has not been a welcoming and caring community. I wouldn't have stayed here all these years. So I'm really proud of our community, and I'm proud of what we have been able to accomplish in being that caring community. So if all of you can be able to kind of spread that message that, Albany is a very welcoming community. So we can't control the actions of all citizens, but we all know if we all stand together, we can get that message out there for people that we are a caring community. So thank you so much for attending. Thank you. Council, next on the agenda, we'll just kind of wait about 60 seconds here until the room gets adjusted. The second item on the agenda, this is on page 5, and this is accepting Courtney Hall's resignation from the Community Development Commission. So I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the resignation and send her a thank you note.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, next is, I got a long script to read here. This is to conduct a quasi-judicial public hearing, and on tonight's agenda is a quasi-judicial public hearing regarding planning file ZC-0114. This is a quasi-judicial public hearing regarding the rezoning of 2 parcels from industrial park to light industrial. The reason for the zone change request is to accommodate the expansion of a casting metals foundry. The location of the property is 2435 and 2445 Ferry Street Southwest. The applicant is Chris Turner with ATI Pacific Cast Products, represented by Jeff Schott with Pillar Consulting. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. I call to order this legislative public hearing at 7:52 p.m. And do any members wish to declare a conflict of interest? Do any members wish to report any ex parte contact? And do any members wish to report a site visit? Rich?
Went past and looked at it.
Okay, all right. And do any members wish to abstain from participating in the proceedings? Okay. Does anyone wish to challenge the City Council's right to determine this matter or the participation of any councilor in this hearing and decision? Okay. And if you wish to testify, please sign in at the table next to the meeting recorder. For all those wishing to testify, please be aware that you must raise an issue with enough detail to afford the council and parties an opportunity to respond to the issue if you later want to raise that issue on appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards approval standards staff will describe or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or development code that you believe apply to the decision. If additional documents or evidence are provided by any party, the City Council may allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any continuance or extension of the record requested by the applicant shall result in a corresponding extension to the 120-day limit. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with enough detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I call for the staff report to Planner David Martineau.
Hello, I'm David Martineau, lead current planner for the City of Albany. And to summarize, ATI Pacific Cast Products, represented by Chris Turner, is applying to rezone 2 parcels that they own, totaling 12.84 acres, from industrial park to light industrial. These parcels are located directly south of their existing plant. The applicant's seeking the change for both properties because there are several advantages in the light industrial district as opposed to the industrial park zone. These include things like more liberal outdoor storage allowances, maximum building height, and maximum lot coverage. The existing ATI-owned facility north of these two subject lots is zoned presently LI, so having all their lots zoned LI makes the land use standards more consistent across their properties. The comprehensive plan designation for both properties is light industrial. Therefore, this request does not require an amendment to the comprehensive plan. Manufacturing and production uses are allowed through site plan review or conditional use in both zones. The proposal was reviewed for conformance with criteria for zoning map amendments found in the Development Code. Staff and the Planning Commission found that the proposed zoning is consistent with the Transportation Systems Plan. Existing public utilities adjacent to the subject property are capable of serving the development that would be allowed in the proposed zone. And on balance, the light industrial zone best satisfies the applicable goals and policies of the Albany Comprehensive Plan. The proposed amendment will not affect implementation of the statewide planning goals. Therefore, staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed zoning map amendment.
Okay, all right. Does any councilors have any clarifying questions regarding the staff report? All right. Okay, and so if anyone wishes to enter an exhibit into the record as part of your testimony, please briefly describe the exhibit and then present it to the city clerk. So would the applicant like to come forward? No, just right here, unless you had something to hand out. Okay, and then you'll just need to state your name, and if you could spell your last name and furnish your address.
All right, thank you. My name is Jeff Schott, S-C-H-O-T-T. My address is actually 52788 Ramsey Canyon Road, Condon, Oregon. I'm representing ATI. I work for Pillar Consulting Group. We're an engineering firm out of Corvallis. This zone change is part of the first step in a process. ATI PCT is anticipating building another casting facility, foundry, adjacent to their existing one. It would be an addition to, not an instead of. The time frame on this right now is it's in planning. It's about 1 to 5 years out. We're probably looking at 100 to 200 or more jobs that would go with this project. Again, the lot coverage, the building height allowance, and outdoor storage are the main motivations for requesting the zone change. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there any questions?
Question.
Rich?
Has there been a site plan for the building and transportation system on and off site?
No, there has not been. We're developing that right now.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Does any member of the audience wish to speak in support of the application? Okay. Does any member of the audience wish to speak in opposition to the application? And does any member of the audience wish to speak who is neither in favor nor in opposition to the application? Okay. Yeah.
Does this property border a residential zone?
We'll go ahead and, actually, since there wouldn't be any rebuttal testimony needed, and then, so if staff wants to come forward.
The reason I ask is, were the residential people notified of this hearing?
I believe so.
Yes. First of all, yes, there is residential zoning located to the east of the site and to the northwest of the site. And for this particular application, notification was sent 300 feet around the perimeter of both lots that are the subject of the zone change.
And did you have any comments from any residents?
We didn't receive any written comments. We did have a few comments at the Planning Commission hearing. I don't recall that any of them spoke directly to the zoning map amendment. Instead, they ranged from support of the proposal to concerns that a future plant might cause some kind of, impact to residential areas that are adjacent to this particular zone.
You know, I think I'd be concerned if I were next door to kind of unlimited outdoor storage of stuff, and I don't know how tall the buildings can get, what, 3, 4?
Well, in the light industrial zone, there is no maximum height, but there is an advantage to the LI zone as opposed to the IP. The IP zone only provides for a 30-foot buffer and screening between the use and the property line, and in the light industrial zone, the buffer is actually 40 feet at that point. So there's actually a bit more buffer than what they could do now under their existing IP zoning.
That'd be between property line and the storage, or property line and the building, or what?
It would be a buffer and screening that would be between their development, basically. So they would need to have something like landscaping, berm, fence, devices like that that would provide that 40-foot buffer.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I'm surprised none of the people showed up.
Okay, all right. With that, I'll declare the public hearing closed at 8 p.m. And council, you have a ordinance that's on page 20. Would you like the city attorney to do the first reading?
Adopt the ordinance as written.
Well, let me go ahead and read it first. This is an ordinance amending ordinance number 4441, which adopted the City of Albany zoning map, adopting findings and declaring an emergency for property located at 2435 and 2445 Ferry Street Southwest, and declaring an emergency. That was on there, sorry.
Okay. Need to read it the second time.
Second time, read it, second time in title only?
Okay, is there a second? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, second
An
reading.
ordinance amending ordinance number 4441, which adopted the City of Albany zoning map, adopting findings and declaring an emergency for property located at 2435 and 2445 Ferry Street Southwest.
Move for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Yeah, Ray?
Second.
Oh, okay, I got that. Yeah, any discussion? Okay, all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. So, yep, okay, thank you. Within 5 days of the decision, the Community Development Director provides written notice of the decision to the applicant and any parties entitled to notice. A decision of the City Council may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals by filing a notice of intent to appeal not later than 21 days after the decision becomes final. All right, okay, thank you, ATI. So, thank you. Okay, next is business from the public. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to bring an item forward? Okay, all right, not seeing anyone. And council, next on the agenda is adoption of the consent calendar. If there's any items that you'd like to have pulled off, or I'll entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I'd like to have 3 and 4, please.
3 and 4? Okay.
Move to adopt the consent calendar minus items 3 and 4.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, Bessie, number 3. Thank you, Boy Scouts, for attending this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, I was looking, I'm thinking that it should have been 4 and 5, but, yeah, 3 is okay, I'm sorry, I did misspeak. It should be 4 and 5.
Okay, you can go ahead and do 4 and 5, and when you make the motion, we can just correct it and make sure that 3 was adopted.
I do have one question on item 4 on the firefighters grant. Does it mention that the sale proceeds from the live fire mobile training will be used towards the required match? Will it be enough to sufficiently cover it, or is there going to be a shortfall that has to be picked up at some point?
So the required match is 10%.
Right.
And our portion of that required match would be $12,240. We'd be getting $10,000 from the sale, so there would be an additional $2,240 that we would most likely include in next year's budget process in order to make up that additional.
It doesn't have to be upfront
No.
Okay.
No.
See, what was your question on 4?
Chief, I was wondering, as I was reading it, it says 2003 is when we got the unit, and it was, the total cost was over $250,000, and so that's only 11 years ago. And I'm wondering, does it depreciate that much, or what caused it to lose its value? I mean, was it not serviced? Was it not maintained? Why would all of a sudden, over $250,000 just like down the drain in 11 years? So
Sure.
why?
Sure, good question. So when we got it, it was one of the primary purposes why we got it is we had no or very few options for doing live fire training, which is something that our firefighters need on a regular basis. It used to be that we would acquire a lot of donated structures, and the restrictions were less than they are currently, and so it was easier for us to go in and then just do live fire training by burning down an old vacant house that somebody didn't want. Over the years, the restrictions have increased significantly, and the ability for us to do that has decreased. And so at the time, we needed a way for our crews to be able to do live fire training. The best technology, if you will, that was out there at that time was a propane-based training, where firefighters would go into a trailer, and then there would be computer-controlled, if you will, propane-based fire that would go through burners that the firefighters would then fight the fire in. And for a new firefighter, it was good if they hadn't seen fire before. It was a good way to sharpen their skills as far as everything that led up to the point of fighting the fire. But the fire was the same every single time. There was no variation in it because it was a propane burner. And so once we acquired it, the senior firefighters going in, first time said, well, this is kind of cool. And then after that, it lost its vigor, if you will. And so we, because of the system that it was, and it used sensors to make sure that it was operating correctly, we initially put a considerable amount of money into the continual maintenance and upkeep of it, but over time came to the realization that really it wasn't the best tool for us to use. And we've now transitioned, and we actually have container-based live training that's Class A. So we actually take a shipping container. We've got 2 shipping containers that I believe we had donated here a few years ago, and we've got them out behind Station 12, and the firefighters are actually able to load it up with wood and ordinary combustibles, and then to go inside and actually fight the fire and watch the fire as it builds and burns to learn about its dynamics and everything associated with the fire burning, if you will. And it varies. Each time it's different. And so the training that we're using currently is much better than the training that we acquired in 2003. And so because of that, over the last couple of years, we stopped putting the money into maintaining the sensors and doing everything that we needed to do. And it was a conscientious decision that we made just because we weren't getting the value out of that piece of equipment. And so then when we decided we were going to sell it, we started shopping on the open market and realized that we were having significant difficulties because other people had gone to this container-based Class A training that we used. And so that's why it really ended up going down in value over the, what I guess, 11, almost 12-year period of time.
Okay, and then with the grant for the Regional Fire Incident Command Training, now is that where the other, like Corvallis and those, come to Albany to train? Or I know we talked a lot about a regional center type thing, so what does this involve? I mean, I'm all for the grants and stuff, but I just didn't quite understand if there's a special place for it or how you do that.
No, it can actually be done in the different departments, and there are 10 departments in the 2 counties that are going to be participating in the grant. If we're successful, they would all receive the same training. Some of it we would do together, but a lot of it would take place in whichever department that's participating throughout the 2 counties. By doing it all, though, together and doing the same type of training, when we respond on emergencies, we'll be, if you will, speaking the same speak, talking the same talk, and going through our incident command structure in a similar manner, which will help with emergency operations.
Yeah, so that's the part that I thought would be very, very good to have everybody talk the same
Correct.
talk. So, all right. And that's all I have.
Okay, any other questions? Okay,
So I move that we,
just go ahead and do 3, 4, and 5 again. Yeah.
okay, we'll do 3, 4, and 5 to approve on the
Second.
consent calendar.
Okay. All right, any more
Thank you,
discussion?
Chief.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Next on the agenda is appointing Nathan Brown to the Community Development Commission, and he is replacing for membership for that position is somebody to represent the financial institution, so he is replacing Courtney Hall that resigned from the Community Development Commission. Okay.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Business from the council, and anything this evening, Rich?
Yes,
Thank you for attending.
I understand Steve is not going to be with us much longer.
That's right.
You're abandoning your post
Yeah.
I am.
and running to Corvallis. Oh, okay, fine.
I was going to bring that up about
How
this.
short are you then?
Last meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, this is your last one, so, you know, you've been very patient with us. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate the good reporting you've been doing, too. So, I know you had a short run at it compared to Kathy Ingalls, you know, who was prior before you, but you've been wonderful working with you, Steve. So we wish you the best of luck in your new adventure in life. And
Congratulations.
exciting
Is what you
times.
wanted? Go
I
ahead.
really appreciate working with all of you as well, and
Oh, thank you.
I really respected the way you deliberated, and treated each other respectfully, and I really, like I said, it's been a pleasure to observe the proceedings and report on it. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the nice comments. So, yeah, but you better stay in touch, too. So, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, anything else, Rich?
No.
Okay, great. All right, Bessie?
I don't think so.
Okay, Bill? Dick?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I'm trying to think how long ago 1966 was, but moving, and I hope I don't discourage you, but moving from Corvallis to Albany was like a breath of fresh air. And I'm kind of, I probably shouldn't mention it even now that everybody's left, but being a student in Corvallis, you're kind of a second-class citizen. And suddenly moving to Albany, I don't know if it's because I was no longer a student, that I seem to change in status, but it was really refreshing to move to Albany. And then I see our resolution here that we're trying to live down a history of discrimination. I was tempted to ask the audience what that referred to, whether it was referring back to the Heckmans and the Monteiths, or in the Civil War, or whether it was just. In the somewhat lengthy time that I've been here, I just really haven't noticed it. So maybe I'm insensitive and not noticing it, but I'm still curious. So if anybody can enlighten me, I'd be happy to hear it. Well, not happy, but interested to hear it.
Okay, all right, anything else, Dick? Okay, and I didn't this evening, and Wes?
A couple of things. Mark, did you want to do yours first, and then I'll wrap it up?
Several weeks ago, council by motion approved a contract increase for work we were doing on the canal. And at that time, I promised I'd come back with information about the contract increase. And so I'm just passing out for you, closing the loop with you. We have what we believe are the final numbers for that contract. And I included a couple pictures just so you can see the scope of the project. The original contract was for $266,000. And we had unanticipated issues with the soil anchors. We had to change from driven to drilled soil anchors, and that was very expensive. Some of that was offset by the cost of not doing the driven anchors. And ultimately, the total change order costs were just over 20%. So what you have in front of you is just a summary of the changes and a couple pictures of the project, and I can try and answer any questions you might have about that.
Is the work complete?
Just about. But all the subsurface work is done, and so we don't anticipate any other changes.
Wow, yeah, big project. Any questions? Okay, well, thank you for the update, Mark. Yeah, thank you. Okay, item number 2.
And since we're talking about the canal, Marilyn and I went over to Lebanon today and met with the city manager, I'm not sure, the city engineer, a couple of folks from their engineering department in any event, and discussed Lebanon's potential future use of the canal and tried to make some progress toward an agreement on what terms and conditions would look like. And I think we made some progress. I think one of the issues that we need to try and get to is, what does the number look like, in terms of what we charge? Over the historic agreement between the two cities was that the city of Albany would cover 2/3 of the cost of the operation and maintenance of the canal, and the city of Lebanon would cover 1/3. But there was a process in place that said that if we were going to increase the cost, the operating and maintenance costs, then we would, and there's a process that you would go through to do that. Over the years, there was an agreement reached between the two public works directors in the two cities back in about 2007, where they actually increased the amount of the payment. It wasn't really following the contract very well, but there was an agreement, so the payments went from, I think it was around $55,000 up to about $77,000 at that time. And that's where we've been. And of course, it's the city of Albany's belief that that number really isn't covering the costs. And so the discussion today, I think, was more cordial than what we've perhaps had in the past, where we both acknowledged, okay, we haven't really come up with a methodology that we both agree to on what to base that charge. And so we agreed to do some study, if you will, on that methodology, how to sort of calculate what is the cost of serving Lebanon through the canal. And one of the things that we also agreed to was to kind of move things along a little faster. Part of the reason for delays and changes in course with this whole project has been some misunderstandings and uncertainty on our part on what Lebanon was proposing to do. We have heard over the years, as I think I've told you before, that they were looking to get out of the canal. And I think they still would like to do that. I think their council, and I can imagine that our council might even feel the same way, that they want a higher degree of independence. They want to be able to kind of control their own destiny. One of the phrases that we hear periodically from Lebanon is that they don't like to feel like they're being held hostage because they're relying on us for their intakes. So they want to look at the Santiam River, and I think that's understandable. Our goal in the end is to try and come up with some kind of an equitable agreement that serves the interests of both communities in a fair way. And my biased summary, at least for today, is that I think we made some progress, and I'm looking forward to working with them to try and nail this down, and so that we, this has been an issue that has required discussion since long before my time. but I'm hopeful that we can come up with some kind of a long-term relationship. The good news is that, you know, we've been supplying water steadily to Lebanon for 30 years without interruption, and we'll continue to probably do that for a good long time, and ideally without too much problem. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Weren't they in the process of hiring the outside consultant to get information about the costs for them?
They've already done that.
Well, and you were able to ask the questions that you wanted, so they haven't gotten the report back yet, or?
They have, no, I don't, I guess this is a short answer. They have some information, but it's preliminary kind of information at this point, so that'll be part of the ongoing discussion.
Any other questions? All right, is that it? Okay, any other staff have anything? So, okay, I'll just announce our next meeting dates before we recess to executive session, but I wanted to inform the council that there is the downtown Christmas parade this Sunday at 5 o'clock it starts, and there's tree lighting afterwards, so it'll be a festive time in downtown Albany this weekend on Sunday, so you're all welcome. And our next meeting is, our work session is December 8th, and our regular session will be December 10th, so our schedule's a little bit adjusted for the holidays. So, and with that, we will recess to executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the